Welcome back to Kanode Knows, the second best BMX podcast in the world. In 2010, I was sitting in my dad's computer room emailing a bunch of BMX companies looking for an internship. And the only one who replied was Adam22 at the Come Up. And he said, "You can get an intern for me, Kanode, come out and stay on my couch." So I went out to Long Beach, spent what I think was like 3 or 4 weeks filming, editing, hanging out, learning how to make blog posts, and doing an internship for the Come Up, which I had no frame of reference for. I had no clue the business end of it. I just knew, like, I checked the Come Up every day, so I'm gonna go out there. And it helped propel whatever status I had in BMX with my internship video part back in 2010, 2011, and yeah, boosted whatever career I had in not even professional, whatever. You know what I'm saying? And Adam was the nice one out of the bunch that I stayed with, and I enjoyed him kind of showing me the ropes of making blog posts and just having a good time. We partied, we rode bikes, we filmed. It was a good time. Since then, we've had different lives, and he's grown to be one of the most controversial podcasters in the world, which is pretty crazy to think about, because I know him from then, and then I did research for this episode because I haven't been paying attention to the Adam22 world, but Jesus Christ, dude. I was like researching everything, and I was like, oh, okay. So Adam, what do you want to talk about? I had fun. I think, like, in his world now, like, you don't get much opportunity to just geek out about BMX shit. So when I asked him to do the podcast, it was almost like, yeah, right, dude. But he said, yeah. So here we are. Adam22 on Kanode Knows. Before we get into it, go to rarsuperfoods.com and get yourself some green superfoods. Rarlife.com. Not Rar Superfoods, Rar Life. Use promo code Kanode for 15% off and get healthy for 2024. Oh, I meant to ask him about health. There's so much shit. I had like 27 questions lined up, and it just kind of flows a little bit. So it's wild to actually talk to a professional podcaster. Like, you could tell Adam can just talk, which I'm sitting there sometimes, he'll be answering a question, and I'm like, holy shit, this is a professional podcaster right here. He's the first, pro talker that I've had on. So whatever, enough rambling from me. Rar Superfoods, Adam22. Here's Kanode Knows. Enjoy. Oh, hey, Adam22.
Hello, Kanode. How you living?
I'm living great, dude. I'm happy, I'm healthy, I'm sexy, I'm glowing. What more do you want,
Big sexy.
Big sexy. Although I don't think I have the constitution to be in the world you're in, mentally or physically. I don't think I got it.
It's not for everybody.
I don't even know where to start, dude. I wrote down a bunch of shit. I'll give you the choice. You want to start BMX, family, no jumper?
Let's talk bike riding, man.
Let's go. Let's get right into it. I usually ask this question last, but who's your Mount Rushmore?
Oh, dude, I was thinking about this the other day. Like, for me, on a personal level, George DeSantos, Edwin, Chase Dehart, and then, like, maybe Brandon Began.
Damn. I like that.
Like, my favorite riders throughout my life, and like the people I just like at any individual stage of my life I thought were the dopest. Now, obviously, that's like my list. It's not the best riders. It's just like the people I enjoyed throughout my life. Yeah.
And it's almost like chronological. Like George DeSantos, and Edwin.
George D was it until Edwin came out. And then it was like, oh, damn, George, I'm sorry. I still fuck with you, but you got glasses. This dude's from Brooklyn. He got a little bit of extra swag. I don't know. My favorite rider title might have had to get passed to him. I'm sure George would understand.
Super fucking influential. All of them. What about the other option you were thinking? Like, if it's not your personal, what's the objectively true answer for Mount Rushmore?
Well, I feel like that goes outside of my wheelhouse, because it's like I wasn't around to witness Matt Hoffman's contribution, or even somebody like Mira. I kind of like started riding maybe like a little bit towards the end of his reign. So, and how do I stick Bob Harrow in there when, like, I don't know of him as a pro rider? I know of him mostly as like a guy, seeing old footage of him, and I watched interviews with him, but it's like ultimately I'm always more drawn towards like a personal top 5 or Mount Rushmore rather than, I wouldn't say that I'm really like capable of ranking the most important riders of all time, because like even my top 4, like, why is Van Homan not on it? I love Van Homan.
Yeah.
But like super influential to me, not as much as like the guys I named.
Well, you just answered it without trying. You just answered it by not answering it. You said not Bob, or I couldn't say Bob Harrell. How could I know? Bob Harrell, Matt Hoffman, Dave Mira, Van Homan. That's pretty close to objectively. Like, there's obviously not an objectively true one, but that's damn close. Like those first three, especially. I think the Van Homan spot has changed with a couple people's different answers, but yeah, that's and everybody has their own personal flavor. That's the more
But like, okay, when we talk about in hip hop, when we talk about like the greatest rapper, I mean, we usually like, if we're being objective, it kind of all comes back to Drake because nobody's been as big for as long.
Drake.
And yeah,
Yeah,
like just had like the biggest like career in terms of like sales and just being number one. And then like I would say Garrett Reynolds is the Drake really, or maybe even if you want to like expand outside of that, you go like Jamie Bestwick or something because it's just like dudes who just dominated their genre of riding for a fucking ridiculous portion of time.
so long. Like Garrett, I can't believe he didn't pop into my mind when I was thinking about that fourth spot. But yeah, it's that's a tough one, dude.
I remember I went on a Nation BMX trip in 2006 maybe, and Garrett was on the trip and he was like 15, and just watching him ride on that trip and like seeing him truck driver like a 13 stair a bunch of times in a row to get the photo. And I was just like, what the fuck? This kid is like 15 and he is the best rider I've ever seen in my life. And then that just really bore out over time and really proved to be accurate.
For real. That it I really admire Garrett. Like the longevity is huge. Like I don't know if he gets enough praise for that alone. Like he gets all the praise for being the GOAT and well deserved, but to be doing it this long, this consistently, this good is incredible. Same with Dennis Henderson too. Like those dudes are nuts. Speaking of people that you've seen in person, tell me like I think I'm trying to think about like your first impressions meeting Stevie or like because you whether it was you or just under OSS, obviously that's you. The era of like Stevie and Brandon was like nothing else with the combination of Hicks and everything involved. But what was your first? I'm curious about like you first meeting Stevie and what that was like.
That was like the very tail end of me being in New York, where like maybe in 2018 or 2019, people from Connecticut, Stevie was kind of like under Jeff Martin. Like Jeff Martin kind of taught him to ride and stuff. And like people would just kind of bring this kid. I remember the first time I posted him on the come up, I think he did a Hop 720 kind of sketch. But he had like one edit that was just like him doing a ton of tricks that nobody was really doing. And he was like 15. And then they brought him to New York and he went absolutely crazy riding wise, but then also was like drinking heavily on that trip, even though he was super young. And I remember he like passed out on the floor in my roommate's bathroom in my apartment. And I didn't really like understand, man, we should have probably tried to nip that in the bud, but, he was kind of out of control in that regard, but he was also just like riding so crazy that you could kind of ignore it. But then I think like then, me and a bunch of people like Alex Platt and Mike Mastroni and stuff, we kind of all decided to move from the East Coast to Long Beach at about the same time. And then once we were out there, it's like Stevie was on volume. So he was kind of like coming through and just sleeping on the couch. And you remember that girl Ozfest? He was like hanging out with her. This is like the era where you were intern or whatnot.
What year did you move out there?
I think 2010. And then, he was coming out a bunch and just riding and stuff. And then like, I remember when he got on Federal, we had the conversation about like him coming out to Cali for the winter because he didn't want to spend it in Connecticut. And he basically was like, yeah, like I'll move out and we could just film all winter and shit. But I need to bring my boy Began. And I had met Began because I went on a merit trip like the summer before in like 2013 or something. And I had met Began. And even though he was young as shit, he was like 18. He was like super good at riding at that time and just had so much style and so many new tricks. And so I was like, yeah, that'd be sick. They both moved out. And then we pretty much spent like the next couple years, just pretty much riding every day. And that was around, I guess that was when we were filming for their edits, like their first on some shit edits. And yeah, those were like really good days because I mean, I don't think I've seen a BMX rider bigger than Stevie since that time period. Like he was just so popular. And the kids were losing their fucking minds about him. And it's just very rare that you could have a BMX rider who's so popular that every time you put him in the thumbnail of the video, you don't even need to put his name in the title or anything. But even just him in the thumbnail was like boom, like 5 times as many views as you were expecting. And it was just kind of out of control. And we had so many good times around that area. And we were doing tons of vlogs. And like, I mean, the good side of it and the bad side was that like we were partying. Pretty much everybody involved was like drinking and having a good time. And like Stevie was like the one person who was kind of out of control with the drinking. Like he just kind of couldn't like compartmentalize it the way that a lot of us could. And so that whole era kind of like went off the rails at a certain point and just kind of stopped being cute at a certain point.
Yeah, it always does, dude. And it's crazy thinking back to like being young and drinking and then getting up and riding the next day. Like it's crazy that it's possible, but thinking about doing that now, like party the night before and then get up and go ride is just not gonna happen, dude. I'm just, I ain't young no more.
Yeah, I can't even imagine like going out partying and then coming in here and sitting and having conversations for 3-4 hours, never mind, you know, having to do something taxing with my body. But I have memories from back in the day, back then when I was probably in my early 30s, and we would like drink Four Loko and do coke and then try to go riding the next day. And I would just remember like, you know, doing a couple feeble 180s and feeling like I was gonna have a fucking heart attack.
Yeah.
That was rough. And that was the beginning of the end of me just realizing I couldn't really put my body through this anymore.
Yep. And it's kind of, I don't know how Stevie's doing right now, honestly, but I hope he's doing all right. I can relate to not having the stop button. After 4 or 5 drinks, I'm just like, let's drink until infinity, you know? And I've seen Stevie, you know, outside of a bar late at night when we're both fucked up and
Oh yeah,
give him love, but it's your own little battle. Have you heard anything? How is he?
we talk a little bit every once in a while, or I like kind of hear about him from certain people. He's definitely back in Connecticut. I'm not sure if he's really riding. He had a bunch of clips in the on some shit video we put out, but yeah, overall, I don't really know. I mean, we were in New York for a week, and part of me was thinking like, oh, what if he hops on the train and comes out here? But didn't happen. Like last summer.
What's the latest with OSS? Like Grant put together Domino, which was pretty dope. You know what I've always wondered is with your OSS videos, you're picking the music. Like, are you just giving Grant a playlist? Like, make the video to this. Like, how does because I know that those are your two worlds, hip hop and BMX. So, kind of makes sense in my head that you would almost dictate the at least artists or vibe. How does that work? Do you collaborate with them?
I remember because like the like Mastroni picked all the music for football, and that really pissed me off. But I didn't like I didn't really pick the fight. You know, I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. I'll just let you use whatever music you want. And so he used like multiple acoustic Fleetwood Mac songs and like
Naturally
some rap song, but I had never heard. I didn't even know who the rappers were. And like me as a huge rap fan, I was kind of annoyed by that. But then when you get into the era of like Ruin Your Whole Summer, me and Charlie were much more like on the same page in terms of music. Or even remember that Denver Nugs trip video that we did. I was much more involved and like made sure that we used Juicy J, Who the Neighbors, and which was like the most played song of that year. But then you fast forward and you get to the point of like this Domino video and stuff. I don't think I had any input in terms of what music was used. I just wasn't really like trying to jump in there, even though like I always kind of liked On Some Shit as a brand, just sort of using like edgy, weird hip hop that wasn't really like mainstream yet. Like I remember using like Gucci Mane in like 2013, and like I think it was Fred Murray or whoever was blogging for Dig at the time, like basically saying like that the music was terrible, that like Stevie's section was awesome, that the music sucked. And like then we went through the whole era of us using Bones and Xavier Wolf and Chris Travis and all them in every video. And so many people who hated that shit. And then even like I remember we had like Don't Quit Your Blowjob edited to Lil B, and I remember having to read like a million comments of people hating us on us for that. Don't Quit Your Blowjob. I forgot about that. But I always kind of like the image of the brand using a lot of like weird, edgy hip hop. But then as time went by, like you notice in videos now, like everybody's using like post punk and hardcore, and like they've kind of gotten away from that, which is good, I think, because for a long time I remember like waking up every morning to post videos on the come up, and like everyone would just be using the same fucking songs over and over and over, and it was just so dry and boring. So I appreciate seeing I didn't want to like jump in there and like tell the people editing the video what songs to use, just because like I'm sort of out of BMX, so I don't want to act like I'm necessarily the guy who's got the the vision for exactly what the best BMX soundtrack should be.
Yeah. I
Um,
It's actually like you talking about getting hate on the songs, and that's like one of the most. I don't know. I think it's valuable. Like if you don't make people hate it, then nobody's gonna love it. You want to play it safe, then you're just in the middle. But if you use a song that's like polarizing, I'd say that's better. Like that's I don't know. I remember doing that, dude. I used "Sexy and I Know It" for Ballman's "Welcome to Shadow" like forever ago, and I edited the shit out of it to this song, like put everything into it, and then I loved it. Ballman loved it. He was like, I don't know if they're gonna love this song, and I had to go back and forth with Ronnie and Ryan for like a couple weeks. I even like threw in a different song, and I was just like, no, this is it. It has to be it. And so it's still one of my favorite things because it's a very hateable song.
Yeah, that's one of the hard parts of owning a BMX brand is that whoever you hire to do the videos for you is just not going to want to listen to you about what music you use, no matter what. Yeah, so I kind of just like chose to stay out of it in terms of the more recent video stuff.
Well, I think Grant's smart, and he did like a good service with the songs he chose, which is dope.
Yeah.
What does it look like running OSS? Like how involved are you in that like day to day? Does that even come up on your plate? Like I'm so curious about your, life, and like you got a team going on, I talked to your publicist, Laura, and like just having that interaction was so interesting, knowing you being the guy that's like cooking scrambled eggs and telling me to wake up in that apartment in Long Beach, like get the fuck up, Kanode. I'm like, dude, let me sleep a little bit more. I'm a teenager, man.
Yeah, I got a crazy team around me. I got 20 full-time employees with just no jumper. And then, but yeah, in terms of on some shit, like how much am I really involved with it? I mean, I was still going riding from time to time up until the point where I had a kid, and then that started to feel kind of unfeasible. So do I have much to do with it? Not really. I'm just kind of, I meet with like the designers and the team and talk about ideas and like stuff like that. But for the most part, I would say that Phil is just kind of doing whatever in terms of the team trips and everything like that. In terms of the DVD, like he kind of called the shots on like when it would come out, when it was actually done and everything. That's the weird part about having kind of like a bigger business, is that at a certain point it just kind of becomes like impossible for you to focus in on the details. And so you have to like, instead of like trying to micromanage, you kind of just have to put people in charge and then hope that they are able to like put people under them and do well and build shit. But it's just like it would be totally untenable for me to try to be the guy who's like picking the banger for the video or like like really micromanaging the soundtrack and shit like that. It's just like I don't really find the time to be able to focus on smaller things, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's delegating. Like it's a not BMX or your world at all, but seeing these real estate guys that I've been around for a couple of years now, and seeing like growing companies, and then it's just putting people that you trust into positions and then letting the rest happen. So it seems like Phil's doing a pretty good job. Like I'm curious about what the budget is for putting out something like Domino. Like do you pick here's 20 grand? I'm curious too.
I have no fucking clue. We've done for years for it, so realistically it's a lot more than 20 grand, but I don't know. I mean, you get, because like those trips end up being like 10 grand or more, I would say, on average.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like what the vision is. It's like, on one hand, it should definitely become a more profitable venture in order for us to keep paying for the trips and stuff. But then at the same time, it's like, I don't know, I get a good feeling out of just knowing that I'm like having this team and that they're all going out and having fun, and that like even when I went to the premiere, even though it was maybe like, I don't know, 200 people there or some shit, it was just like a really good feeling to sort of see how many people still care about this stuff, since that was like the sole focal point of my life, was just doing BMX related stuff for like 20 years until I like sort of somehow stumbled ass backwards into a different opportunity.
Yeah. It's a pretty wild like pivot that happened, that I can only imagine, like, oh shit, okay, I'm going this route for a little bit, like the Xavier Wolf interview pops off, and then all right, let's go.
Yeah.
But let's stay on BMX. I want to talk about the fuck. I just had one. God damn it.
I mean, that era of kind of like going from riding BMX every day, because like the weird thing about it is that I had been grinding the No Jump or the Come Up YouTube channel for like years at that point. Starting in like 2012, I kind of started to realize that the blog was not really like what it used to be in terms of importance, and that everything was sort of moving towards social media. And then that caused me to start vlogging and doing BMX podcasts. And then somehow doing that like opened the door for me doing podcasts outside of BMX. And at some point that just, I don't know, it's like I was really starting to experience success with the BMX vlogs. Like I finally had started to hit like $10,000 a month from all the culmination of like putting out so many vlogs. And like that was the exact month where I finally hit $10,000 a month, which had been my goal for a long time, was the exact time period that No Jumper started to like become such a big opportunity that I couldn't really ignore it anymore, and kind of needed to start focusing all my time on that, which I always look at that as like such a critical juncture in my life, you know?
Yeah, that's huge. Wait, is this before Adpocalypse? Like the 10 grand a month? Like,
Yeah. Cause I remember when No Jumper got hit by the Adpocalypse, we were making like almost 50 grand a month. And then it turned into $5 grand, like overnight, like instantaneously.
It's so wild. Like
that was brutal.
It feels like the money you're making is just not in your control, even though like it is your shit. Like YouTube could just be like, nope, and then that happened. It's wild.
I know their YouTube channels demonetized like in the past couple months, who all of a sudden just were making like 100 grand a month, and then all of a sudden it was just gone, and they just had to figure shit out from there. And that's why I'm always very cautious of taking on a lot of set expenses, because you just kind of never know. Like we make a significant amount of money from Facebook, and about a year and a half ago we lost our Facebook for like a year. We lost monetization, so that was like instantaneous $1 million plus worth of income that we missed out, which, you know, you just can't prepare for that kind of stuff. And then meanwhile, like the mortgage on the building that we're sitting in right now is like 20 grand a month. So it's like, you know, I definitely just don't want to land myself in a position where my expenses are out of control. And like a lot of these revenue streams are a little volatile. Like we've consistently made money from YouTube since 2018 or whatever, after the Adpocalypse, when shit started to get kind of normal again. But we've just kind of like always been able to figure out how to make it work. But I'm deathly afraid of like having this crazy you know, amount of money that I have to hit every month, you know?
Yeah. Big nut.
Big nut.
Big nut, dude.
Rest in peace to Big Nut.
That's a guy?
Yeah.
That's a rapper? I don't know about Big Nut.
He was fucking Fonnie Willis, the district attorney in Georgia, who's prosecuting both Donald Trump and Young Thug right now.
Big Nut,
street dude.
rapper.
I know a lot of weird things. He wasn't a rapper; he was a street guy.
Big Nut. YSM Nutty. Is that him?
Probably. YSM.
Yeah. Fucking interesting. Like, I you know, many questions about different periods. There's too much shit to talk about with you, but one thing I'm curious about is the peak, the come up. I remember us sitting on your couch in Long Beach and kind of being like, all right, let's do the intern thing. And you're like, all right, Kanode, I'll show you. And you made a blog post and showed me how to do it. And I just had no frame of reference for like, this is even a business. You know, I thought you were just kind of running a blog. And I think from like the little research I did on you, like it wasn't tremendous, but at the come up's peak, according to the internet, was like 100 grand a year, I think, like from ad revenue from different BMX companies. What was the model like at the come up at its finest? What was the model of that business?
So yeah, I started in 2006, and like the business model in the beginning was like basically just trying to get BMX companies to give me like 150 or 200 bucks a month. And at first we had no advertising for a long time, and then like I remember like Ronnie and Moeller kind of hitting me up and wanting to do it, and they were down because it was pretty cheap and everything. And I kind of just had like the most ridiculous amount of traffic coming into the blog, so I thought it was pretty easy, or it was pretty obvious, like, you know, pitching that. And I think, yeah, like there was definitely years there where about 100 grand a year was what I was making from the come up. And then yeah, over time I saw that number starting to fall off a little bit, where, you know, we were kind of like slowly raising our rates, but then BMX advertisers were kind of falling by the wayside. Because you got to remember, like 2006, when I started the come up, BMX was like really still in its heyday. Like everybody was still experiencing the complete bike money. for the first time. Like I remember Fit going nuts with the complete bike, and then everybody else followed behind them. And then all of a sudden, like, and this is like the era of like Aaron Ross being the biggest rider and selling 5 billion pairs of grips and just every other signature part. And then like around that time, 2018, 2019, 2020, it's like you slowly kind of started to see BMX falling off a little bit, where the companies weren't making such crazy amounts of money. And I remember when I started it was like we were posting about a new frame company like every day, like every couple weeks was a new frame company, which I think is pretty funny. I heard Moeller say this the other day, like, where's the new frame companies? Like, you just don't see it anymore. Nobody is trying to get into that business. And yeah, like as time went by, I started to realize like, oh, I could probably, like, if I really want to like make more, I pretty much have to turn to YouTube. And I was just treading water, making like a couple grand a month for a long time, until the interviews and the vlogs really started to work. And I really kind of started to figure out like a good balance between personality and actual riding. And obviously Adam LZ was a huge influence with that shit back in the day. Cause I mean, he was like the most popular rider I might have ever seen in my entire life. And meanwhile was like absolutely despised by the fucking industry.
Yeah.
We all recall the great Stranger debacle of 2014, maybe.
Yeah.
And when everybody left the team all at once because Adam LZ got added. But like, you know, I grinded the fuck out of that shit for a few years there, of just like constantly trying to make it happen. And that also, though, was probably part of what sort of had me like burnt out on making BMX content, was just like grinding out a vlog every single day was just kind of brutal, especially combined with like drinking and going out and stuff, especially when, you know, people are coming into town and it's just like, I'm taking them to skate parks. I'm taking them to like the same 20 spots in LA that you're able to session during the day. And it was just kind of getting old. And there was just a point. And also I was experiencing shit physically where my body was just starting to hurt more and more. And the injuries were kind of piling up. And I just like couldn't really ride on the same level that I wanted to. Like I remember even up until like 2013, 2014, whatever, I still felt like I was learning new tricks pretty consistently, and that was keeping me really engaged with the bike ride and stuff. But as soon as I felt like I wasn't progressing anymore, and the content creation side of it was getting kind of boring for me, and all of a sudden I had no jumper, which like just seemed like it had way more limitless potential, that was when I kind of just had to take a step back. And then also it just became like the store, like my time was just so valuable every day at the store, in terms of just like nonstop rappers and celebrities and personalities showing up, and I'm making vlogs every day and interviewing people, and every day I hang out at the store, I'm meeting a bunch of people that I can do content with. And you know, at a certain point I just kind of looked at my life and I was like, oh, you've been riding bikes for like 20 years and it was great, but realistically this new challenge just seems like it's probably the thing that is going to keep you excited about life moving forward, you know?
Yeah, big time. I have that internal thought a lot of like, all right, when is, you know, because I kind of obsess and zero in on one thing at a time. And it's like, I know that BMX can't last forever. I won't let myself keep doing, I mean, I'll do it for fun as a hobby, but like to focus in, finish a full length, do the podcast, like it's like, I want to switch to making money. So, and that's so fun and I love it, but it's hard to get myself sometimes to, all right, let's go do that stuff for hours and hours that I know I'm going to make $0 off of, but I do love the shit, you know?
No, totally. And the lack of money is enough to make nearly anybody kind of bail out at a certain point. Like I was hearing Magoo and Moeller talk about that on that fucking monster of a podcast that they did with Fudger that I listened to a couple weeks ago or whatever.
Yeah.
And, which was amazing, by the way. And I have a shitload of respect for Magoo, and I didn't really realize how much torment I put him through at that time period. Not that I really gave a fuck at the time, because for me, the fact that I thought that Snafu was gay was pretty much enough for me to completely like just want to obliterate them at that time in my life. But
you're a monster.
yeah, I didn't give a fuck. Like his feelings never entered into my mind at all, just because it was like, oh, this brand is lame. We must use it for content, which is, it's a lot what YouTube is like these days as well. It's like people are always just kind of trying to tear people down or whatever. But I mean, it's true. Like nobody gets into BMX these days because they want to make money from it. BMX is left with whoever's passionate about it, that hasn't sort of bailed out and gone to do something else, you know?
Yep.
Which is, it's kind of sad, but
you keep seeing them fall off. Like it just, you know, every every once in a while, I'm like, oh yeah, where's that person? And then oh, they're gone. You know, and it's like I don't blame them. It's fine. I would quit too.
And
What?
everybody, when I look at Instagram and I'll see somebody tagged on like a throwback post, I think it happened to me yesterday with Kelly Bolton, who I hadn't thought about Kelly Bolton or seen him in at least probably a decade. And I just seen like they posted a clip of him doing like a wall ride barrel roll from 2006, which I don't remember at all, but it was fucking sick. And I click on his page and he's a mountain bike dude or like a motocross dude or whatever. I forget, but like same thing with Christian Regal, same thing with Mike Taylor. Like when I see all these people who are like sick shredders at that time period, very likely they just kind of end up converting to doing stuff with bigger wheelbases. And you know, when I look at the younger generation of kids, like it's just you're way more there are BMX kids that are doing sick shit, and there's dudes with weird ass styles that I'm super excited about. And like but then more often than not, when you're like scrolling through Instagram, if you see some 12 to 15-year-old doing a crazy trick, they're probably on a scooter or a skateboard. Realistically, these days it can be kind of hard to accept.
It doesn't quite reach like, you know, the masses. We're in our own little niche within the niche of bikes. Like the niche of bikes is pretty small alone, and that includes road bike, mountain bikes, and then BMX is this tiny little dot in it. And then within that tiny little dot, there's like cliques of like, here's the core industry dudes and street guys, and that's cool and that's not cool. The world's so fucking small. It's like it's a tough one. What would you do if you were, say, as like good as Matt Ray? What would you do to make money? To like, how would you go about making money as a BMX pro if you could, I don't know, magically become one? Yeah,
Like me being me, if I had Matt Ray's bike skills, I would probably just be like a YouTuber slash influencer slash personality. Cause like I remember seeing that Adam LZ shit happening and just realizing like, okay, this is the model going forward if BMX riders want to actually like build something, because the amount of money that he was able to make at that time was just like monstrous compared to everybody else. I think you just kind of like have to make it about your personality. And it doesn't mean that you have to be this like super corny ass vlogger guy, which that was the problem at the time, is that like Adam LZ's content was super cringe. And then like when I look back at my content around that time, it was like probably unnecessarily cringe. Like you could kind of do the vlog thing without making it super lame, which I see all the time because, you know, Cinema will put out a banger 5-minute video, and then they'll have like what is basically a vlog of all the guys hanging out. None of those dudes were trying to do that shit back in the day. You know, Dakota Rhodes was not signing up to be part of a vlog back then. Like maybe now it's kind of more accepted because you have so many, well, but just the vlog thing in general is kind of fallen by the wayside in BMX. But I feel like you have to sort of create this overall brand and personality around yourself. Like even when you look at Brad Sims, you know, he's kind of done it where he went and got an agent and he convinced all these companies to invest in him to basically, you know, be able to ride and do something with his identity. But yeah, I mean, that's a lot of work to bite off. Whereas like being a pro rider when I was a kid, you just literally rode bikes and like hoped that somebody would kind of point the camera at you. But back then it was like so unbelievably uncool to be self-promotional. Whereas now with social media, I mean, that is the only option, is that you have to just relentlessly promote yourself. And maybe I wouldn't even be the best person to be figuring out what the best path is for a young BMX rider, because I still have some of that shit in my head that if I see a dude land a trick at Nitro Circus and then he shoves his fucking fist in the air, it goes through in my brain like, oh man, what a loser. What a douchebag. But that's not like, you can't think that way in this modern age. Like you have to celebrate yourself because nobody else, there's no magazine to do it for you, you know?
Yep. It's a mindset switch. And I think I have it too a little bit. Like the Adam LZ vlogs being cringe and looking at your shit back in the day and being like, Adam's fucking vlogging again. And just like the resistance to vlogging was just like palpable. Everybody was like, nah, fuck that. That's whack. But now it's like, hey, you should have done it consistently and you'd be making good money right now. But it's not too late to start. I don't know.
I understand those people because they were right. Like if Dakota had been disgusted by the idea of like vlogs taking over BMX, he was right, because he pretty much saw the writing on the wall of like, oh, that thing that you thought that you were working on becoming your whole life, that thing is now fundamentally changed. And it's not just about like going to a contest and getting a couple clips and props. It's like, no, you're basically creating a fucking document of your life every day. And if you're not going to do it on YouTube making vlogs, well, at the very least, you're going to be doing it on Instagram, and you're going to be getting clips. Like even just the Instagram clip thing was super controversial back in the day.
I remember. Yeah.
And now when you look at it, it's like, even when I go on trips with the on some shit team, like the last one I went to was in Brooklyn like over a year ago, it's just default that like a lot of tricks are considered Instagram worthy, even if you got a guy with a $5,000 camera sitting right there to film you.
Yeah, big time. It's almost better. Like I'm still filming with the VX for the mediocre at best video, and I tell the dudes, I'm like, no, that you need to put that on Instagram. I'll film it with my phone. Like it's better. It's wild. But I remember the resistance to it.
They
I'm
want
just
to
like, you're gonna put that on Instagram?
Yeah, well, the dudes want to take like the jibby clips, like the little micro pole jam clip, and put it on Instagram. And to me, it's like, no, that's the dope shit. Like the kinked rail clip is cool too, but like the weird pole jam to like land in some little bank or whatever, like that doesn't really like make sense automatically in my mind. Because to me, I mean, and that's something kind of under discussed, is that like Can I Eat era wasn't like spot era. Like nobody was tripping out about spots. When you go back and watch Can I Eat, they're all riding like basic ass spots in like downtown Manhattan. And then you fast forward to like New York City videos 10 years later with all the AM PM shit. Now they're like really exploring Queens and Brooklyn and Staten Island and going crazy, just finding spots. And like that kind of became the signifier of who's a dope rider in New York City in that scene at the time. It was like, it wasn't necessarily as much about the tricks, it was about the spots. But then also like I feel like that's part of why New York and like street riding in general kind of like fell by the wayside in comparison to like plaza riding and all this kind of new shit that's taken over, because so many of the young kids, especially like in 2013, 14, 15 on YouTube, they wanted to see people riding plazas and doing like nose bar on a flat ledge. They didn't want to see the hunt for the perfect weird pole jam set up in the hood or whatever. Whereas like I really came to accept that was the cool part of riding. And obviously like the cool kids in BMX still get that, but it's like a dissonance between like the consumers and the actual riders.
Yeah, there's such a huge breakdown of that, because like it's almost like an acquired taste of like, you start watching BMX videos as like a new BMX person and you're like, oh wow, tricks, and so you don't give a shit about spots you don't even know yet, and then like your taste accumulates over time, and when you're bombarded by video parts all the time, you start to appreciate all the other shit. Like you can be the same mediocre rider but go to the cool spots, and then it's a whole different ball game of like beauty. AMPM is fucking up there, like Joey is like, and that's the true shit too. He's just like a teacher, I think, if he still is. I don't know if you talk to him at all, but just that's pure, I love, and I'm out here, I'm filming with Clay Johnson and Robbie Digital, and watching them just like enjoy the hunt every single time that we're out is like, these guys are pure, street dogs. I love it.
Yeah, and I mean I just watched that Act Like You Know video that came out like a week or two ago, and yeah, there was like many moments where I was rewinding it to just look at the spot, because it's just like a really weird fucking cellar door spot. And I have nobody to talk to about that. Like, I'm like gonna take a picture of the spot and send it to. There's just like nobody left in my life where I'm like having like spot conversations on that level.
Yeah. Hey, babe, come here. Yeah. Babe, come look at this cellar door.
For me to accept at a certain point, like even 2011, 2012, like, oh, the kind of riding that I really like and that I really care about is not the thing necessarily. And the combination of going out riding and personality is going to be the thing that's actually going to move on the internet. And then you're forced to sort of make this decision between the stuff that your like inner self feels is cool versus what is going to get a reaction online. And you're always kind of battling that in this day and age, because the coolest shit is not necessarily going to be the stuff that's going to perform the best.
Yeah, it's so interesting just thinking about you paying attention to that and being like aware of it in the moment is very interesting to me. Like, because I know like you rode for many years before it became like a business for you, but then like I think probably having the perspective of like, okay, I'm monetizing the come up, I got to pay attention to everything, and then that dichotomy of like, here's what I love, but here's what needs to happen in order for business to succeed. It's like navigating that is fucking interesting, because a lot of people would be like, fuck money, I don't care about money, I just do what I do and I love it, versus like riding the line of like, you can still love it and do the shit that you like, but bend over a little bit, pause for the fucking future of whatever's coming. How is it was that a conscious thing, do you think? Like, did you have those internal thoughts?
Oh yeah, I was thinking about it, and I found it depressing. So just sort of realized that like the values riding wise that I kind of grown up with, which were always in a state of flux, because the shit that I was into when I was 14 was like different than the shit I was into when I was 24. But you know, that's like how it is. Like the social media shapes everything about our culture now. Whereas like back in the day, no, like back in the day in high school, or like, you know, after high school in college, whatever, I didn't know a single girl who was posting scantily clad photos of themselves on the internet. And now, because of the incentives that the internet provides you with, almost every girl I know is posting, you know, photos that previously would have basically put you in the porn star category, but they're just doing it because it's rewarded on Instagram. So it's like social media just completely shapes everything. And that is kind of sad. But like, I mean, BMX in its previous state was shaped by the VHS era and the magazine era. And like, you know, that was a hard thing for a lot of people to realize when they realized that like, oh, riding bikes and carrying 8 flashes on your back and like a bunch of camera equipment just so that when we get to the perfect 10-stair rail, you could spend a half hour setting up flashes so that you can do a tooth hanger on the rail and get the photo. I mean, that made sense in the magazine era, and then completely ceased to make sense in the web video era, because, you know, even Jeff Z now is like out here filming vlog. Well, I don't know, is Jeff Z filming vlogs? I think Fudge is filming vlogs. A lot of guys who probably never thought that they would film a vlog ended up filming vlogs, because like that thing that you spent a decade learning to do with the photo shit just doesn't really translate to the Instagram era. So everybody's been forced to basically like kind of
Adapt or die.
Yeah, you got to adapt, even if it means that, you know, the thing that you were passionate about kind of goes by the wayside, right?
Yeah. So like Fudger too, it's kind of hilarious to think about putting him in a time machine and being like, look, this is what you're going to be doing, you know? Like, I love it. It's hilarious. Because I don't even know if I can relate to that. I think I'd be stoked if I saw just doing podcasts and shit. But yeah, like, oh no, I'm vlogging, but it is what it is. And I think the cringe factor is gone at this point. It's more accepted, and it's almost like that, you know, we went from the magazine era to the web video era, which the come up was a huge part of. I remember how big of an impact just switching from anonymous comments to Facebook comments had on me, by the way. So we go from era to era to era, and currently we're in this like social media super saturated vlog, YouTube money, if you can get it. Like, shout out to Panza and whoever else on YouTube is making money. But Billy and Panza are like a good model for this current era. But like, what's coming? You know, what's
that
next?
anonymous comment era really stuck with a lot of people, because I'm pretty sure I remember like when that Magoo episode I was watching, he like, when he was describing the come up, he's talking about the anonymous comment era, which was kind of funny to me because that was a relatively short period of time. That was probably almost like this the first year or two of the come up existing, and then we switched over to the Facebook comments like relatively quickly. But during that time period was when the come up really stood out to people, because you could just go on there every day and see people getting ripped to shreds in the comments. And like, there was so little oversight that, you know, literally anyone could say anything. And even that doesn't exist right now so much. Like, you can make an anonymous Twitter.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is like the biggest BMX website at that point, and anybody could say anything. And I remember the Ross Cats?
No. What's the Ross Cats?
A little bit before your time, like Russ Barone and Sean Garrett were
yeah. Ross.
Yeah.
Why did I think Ross is in like Ross from Friends? Yeah, I remember the Ross Cats. Yeah.
But they had like all like Jamaican or Rasta flag like parts shit at the time. And I remember I was supposed to do like an interview with them, and that was when it was still like a written interview thing. And I remember Sean Garrett not wanting to do it because his problem with the come up was entirely the anonymous comments. And I remember like trying to explain to Keith Romanowski, who was like the connect on that, like, bro, that's like, I'm not writing that shit. And like, but that was like early era of me realizing like, oh, the meta conversation that takes place alongside your content is going to reflect on you no matter what.
Yeah. I heard too. It's like, it had like an emotional impact. The anonymous like veil that people could hide behind and just shit on you, or like that meant that means it, or it made it mean a lot more when all of Anonymous approved and was like, I fuck with this and it's sick. Like if you got good comments on the come up during that era, it was a big deal. It was very rare. And yeah, it had an emotional. I still remember like being posted on the come up and refreshing. Like, what are the anonymous comments saying about me now? Like, I don't remember what it was, but that type of vibe.
It was a brutal era, and but I feel like that energy kind of like dissipated from the come up, and it sort of went to being more like a regular blog. Like there was a lot of like I wrote a lot of spicy articles at that time and everything, but I felt like that energy reappeared in the Rodeo Peanut era.
Yeah, yeah, for real. And then that was a good era. I enjoyed it. That energy from
That
Rodeo
was
Peanut.
all anyone talked about for a while, and I actually I kind of started that too because I remember I had LOL BMX as like the first Rodeo Peanut, and then it turned into Rodeo Peanut at a certain point. But just like the fact that anybody cared about bike riding enough to like be making fun of everybody for the tricks that they were doing or the way that they were doing them or whatever was just like so unbelievably funny. And I feel like that's what we're still missing to this day, is that like out of all the BMX websites and all the people making BMX related content, there's nobody that like stands out to you as like, oh, this person loves this shit, cares about this shit, but is willing to make fun of this shit. You know, there's a bunch of people doing like good content, like Fudger and shit. I watched some of his interviews. I watched some of your interviews, but like, I don't know. There's something about teasing that like shows your level of passion
Yeah.
for that shit that is like appetizing to people on a different level, I guess. Team Weed had that spot for a while too. Gotta shout out them.
Yep. And then Temwed 42. Dude, I got put in that group chat with whatever Charlie has going on, and it was a fucking waking nightmare. I was like, what the fuck is happening to my phone? Just nonstop, all kinds of weird, crazy, like what's the term for those memes that are just like overcooked or fried or whatever the fuck?
Deep fried memes.
Yeah, deep fried memes going on and shit talk. It's a different world that we're in. I don't know. Like I don't know who would take that spot right now. I even just got memed by something on Seinfeld BMX. Like I posted my new haircut yesterday, and then it became a meme with like 3 likes on Instagram, and I was like, cool, you know what the fuck?
Seinfeld BMX is a great app. I gotta check that out. But
Yeah.
no, it was. I remember back then that was so fucking funny that like there was a jam that we did in 2014 or so, like a Monster Energy jam, and there was like a up rail with grass after it, and like it was somewhere in Europe. It might have been Germany or some shit, and everybody's just doing tricks on it, and then like they just post on Rodeo Peanut like nice street jam, nothing counted. And I was pretty stoked on that. But they kind of nailed it because they were so relentlessly negative about everything that it wasn't like they were like kind of nice to some shit. No, it was like, we're going to make fun of everything. And then it's kind of hard to get mad about it, which I
Yeah,
think
and nobody would take it personal. I mean, I'm sure there's people that took it personal, but I think it was almost like an honor if you got shit on by Rodeo Peanut, or like when they zoom in on like a double dribble on a tail whip is hilarious to me.
yeah, but there was a lot of shit that needed to be called out. Like, oh my God, I remember getting so much shit for writing articles back then about different things in BMX that I thought needed to stop. And examples were Indian givers, which I made fun of in a blog post, and I swear to God they disappeared from BMX pretty much soon after that. Like I got a lot of shit for hating on the Indian giver, but then it was clearly massively influential because you never fucking saw it after that. And it's not like I was the only person making fun of it, but I definitely think I helped push that through, of just like encouraging people to take some pride in their rollouts. And I mean, I'm a guy who objectively has pretty ugly rollouts. At least the Switch ones were fucking gross as fuck. But like, it's like you got to take some pride, and you got to be willing to have opinions like that. I remember I did a whole blog post about song jacking, and I just remember like Empire going in on me, and it's like the whole perspective was like, this is BMX, it's supposed to be fun, like why are you bringing negativity into BMX? And my perspective was like, I'm not bringing negativity into BMX. I just have an opinion, and
Yeah.
I feel like it's a fair opinion. And I think song jacking, if anything, like using a song that somebody else used in their video part, if it's like a very well-known song, I mean, it's just like objectively easy to see why that's a bad idea. And like all I did was kind of list out the reasons why you shouldn't do it. And I just got like so much hate for it. And now I look at like Gifted Hater, whose YouTube channel I absolutely fucking adore. You watch that shit?
Gifted Hater.
Bro, he's like the greatest action sports commentator. He's like a skateboard commentary channel. And he does that, but he does it so much more mercilessly than I used to. And he's like so celebrated for it, because there's a lot of like toxic positivity in action sports, where
Yeah.
like everybody just wants shit to be all positive. And so therefore there's like almost nobody who's willing to bite off having a controversial opinion about anything. But I feel like that, like in skateboarding with Gifted Hater, they fucking celebrate it. In 2008 in BMX, when I was writing these blog posts, very much not appreciated.
Have you always been this way? Have just a opinion and then say fuck you, like, and not fuck you, but you know what I'm saying. Like you're opinionated and like you believe what you're saying. Like I don't think I've ever been that strongly opinionated. Like how does one become like that? You know what I mean?
I mean, I feel like when you look at the West Coast versus the East Coast, on the East Coast, it's like that everyone I grew up around in terms of BMX riders, punk kids, hardcore kids, whatever, like everybody was kind of like that. Like everybody had strong opinions and were like kind of just like putting them out there. Like all the BMX dudes I started riding with were some of the most relentlessly negative people I've ever met in my entire fucking life. And you move to the West Coast and everybody's just like, chill, bro. Let's smoke another blunt. Let's like shred. Let's just have a good time. And it's like, to me, there's and I deal with this even with my girl to this day, is that like I have to kind of moderate my tone sometimes because she's from the West Coast. She doesn't get how I communicate. So I have to like moderate that. But like, yeah, for me growing up, that was always what it was like, the person who would like get the laugh at the skate park was the person who was like the most negative or the most critical or the most willing to have like an outsider opinion about something, which to me now I see the value in that so much, because in terms of hip hop, the people who make the news and go viral and do well in terms of this content are people like academics, Joe Budden, me to whatever extent, people who can listen to the new Drake album and then have an opinion on it and be able to create 20 or 30 minutes of conversation out of it. And your opinion goes somewhere beyond, yeah, I thought it was cool. It was a cool album. Like that I'm gonna listen to that album when I'm driving around. It's just like, okay, nobody's clicking to hear you say that. That's boring.
Yeah.
And same thing with like, if I watch a BMX video right now and you tasked me with writing 500 words about it, I'm going to be looking for the things that I don't love about it, because anybody can say, oh, this video was full of progressive rail tricks. Okay.
He did a great job. The filming was fantastic.
Yeah, that's boring as fuck. But like, we live in the take era now in hip hop, at least. Like the people who have exciting, interesting commentary, and to the point where like, Joe Budden will talk shit about somebody and immediately have that rapper responding, and that makes his podcast so much bigger when you have somebody who's got 10 million followers reacting to what you said about it. So I very much see the value in being able to have a provocative take now. But man, BMX really tried to convince me to stop doing that, because it both in terms of like having friends and getting advertisers, that shit wasn't doing me any favors back then.
Yeah, we'll give you $500 a month, but you got to stop being mean about our shit.
Bingo. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think you're right. It is valuable. It makes me think about myself. I'm like, I don't really have that strong of an opinion on shit. Like maybe podcasting isn't the move. I don't think nobody's clicking on my shit to hear my controversial take on the latest BMX video.
Part of me, I wish I had nothing going on so I could just have a BMX blog again and just like watch video parts every day and then like write funny, critical stuff about it, because that was what my entire life was back then. And it sounds pretty fun. I just kind of have like too many opportunities outside of that,
Yeah. I mean, you're at a different level now. I mean, speaking of being at a different level, first of all, the question that I blanked on earlier was, do you miss it? The era of like BMX is your entire life, and you just answered it like, yes, of course. But I feel like life changes and now you have new challenges in front of you. And
yeah, but like that era, when I look back on it now, it's such a weird feeling for me of like, oh, I was in my early 20s, mid 20s in New York City, getting to go out riding bikes every single day with all these cool personalities, hilarious personalities, a lot of people who ended up being like very well known in the scene and whatnot. And granted, it was kind of like after the peak of the Scavenger / Animal / Edwin, Vinny, and Vic era. Like by the time I moved to New York, Vic Ayala had just quit riding. And like Vinny wasn't really riding like that anymore. You didn't really see him around that much. Edwin was kind of slowing down around like 2005 or whatever when I moved there. And I just look back at that and I'm like, bro, those were the greatest times of your life where you had very few responsibilities. Somehow you had sort of stumbled into having an income stream, but you were able to just go out and have fun on your bike in New York City for all these years in a row. But I didn't fully enjoy it the way that I should have, because I was constantly haunted by the idea that I needed to do something bigger with my life, and that I needed to make more money, or I needed to be able to like that there was just something bigger that I needed to do with myself, you know?
Yeah.
And like looking back on that now, I wish I had been a little bit more content and like willing to just chill and just like enjoy those years, because now I have so many responsibilities on my plate that the idea of like waking up and just picking a random part of Queens to go ride bikes in and look for spots sounds so fucking sick. Whereas
Yeah.
like now I wake up every day and it's like, oh, I have 3 interviews in a row and a bunch of phone calls with different people scheduled in between, and some guy's going to stop by and show me his weed, and I have to like make 5 minutes out of my schedule to go talk to this guy about his weed so that he'll hopefully advertise with us or whatever the fuck it is. You know, it's like my schedule's so stacked now, and I feel like I can't chill because I don't know how long this opportunity is going to last, and I don't want to take it for granted. But like when I fantasize about what I'm going to be doing when I'm 50 or 60, I imagine myself living a little bit more slow paced lifestyle, you know?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Like, most successful people have that same bug that you're talking about of just like, I need to. There's, you can't really enjoy the moment because you're thinking about the fucking future, and like, that's dramatic to say. Obviously, you're enjoying the moment, but you're not fully present. You're not like feeling the contentness, and it's that that's it's almost anxiety that like I've felt it in like waves of like, fuck, let's go, let's go, let's go. But most of the time, pretty like, okay, whatever's coming will come. I see that in successful people of like, they all have that. I've gotten close with a couple of, millionaires, and it's like that drive. It's never, let's just chill and enjoy the day. It's like, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, gotta go, gotta go.
Ambition is a sickness at a certain point, you know? And like,
Yeah.
when I listened to this crazy New York Times panel that Elon Musk did a couple weeks ago, and it was just like, this is a guy who, as much as I think he's kind of a douchebag at times for some of his weirder decisions, it's like he has that ambition to the point of like true insanity. This is a guy who's he created the fucking electric car company. He created an outer space company. And now his new thing is that he's trying to put a fucking wire going into your brain so you can use it without having to look at it type shit, And it's like, I mean, I look at myself and I'm like, oh, I just started a YouTube channel. I just talk to a bunch of people on camera. I just have like a bunch of social media accounts. It's like, and doing all that has made me feel like a certain degree of contentment where I don't really know. There's not like another level to this in my mind of like, oh, I started a business that can make millions of dollars a year. So now I need to start a business that can make $100 million a year. No, I don't really have that. Like that's my ambition had like a ceiling, because I think that like my perspective and my personality was like the main thing that I have. I'm not like a tech genius or like a guy who has like brilliant software ideas or anything like that. Like there is part of me that when I look at my friends who have like dope brands that make products like that, I'm kind of like envious. Like, Zach from FTP just like literally wakes up every day and like works on making cool shit that has FTP logos on it, and like that in a way, maybe if I were to look at the business, maybe I would still rather be running No Jumper, but like the simplicity of that is very attractive to me. And so sometimes I think about that of like, oh fuck, maybe I should like just end up being like a guy running a weed brand and just wake up every day and try to make that brand as cool as possible, as opposed to what I do now, where it's like, I'm just trying to have as many conversations as possible and engage as many interesting people as possible,
Yeah. That makes me wonder, like, what is your current mindset like as far as content creation? And like, I know pretty surface level, like how No Jumper evolved from into becoming like multiple shows, and then it's kind of like devolved, I think, of this last year of just like, let's condense everything, people leave, blah blah blah, whatever the fuck happened. And so like, where's it at now, and what are you thinking about for 2024 for everything that you're working on?
Yeah, I
Like,
mean,
where's
it's
your brain
weird
at?
when you start a business and then, or like, with No Jumper, it's like at a certain point I thought I wanted it to be this big media company where we were going to have all these different personalities on the channel. And I still have that to whatever extent, but like the idea that I was going to be able to just like stick a bunch of dudes on camera and have them create a popular podcast, and that was going to be the future of the brand. I mean, there's just, you get reality checks along the way with that shit where it's like, you know, you can get everything that you ever wanted in terms of building up like a media company and then kind of realize like, oh, I'm losing money on this. Like I need to try to like fix this, or I need to like change this up. So I had a little bit of that this year, but you know, yeah, we still like have multiple different things. We do the news every day. I was just on the news this morning. I have a show with Whack 100 that's been doing super good, like better than any of the content that we had going on before. And I don't know. I mean, that is kind of like a weird thing now, is that I have so many ideas in the short term. And if I go and watch videos on YouTube for an hour, I guarantee I'm going to think of a bunch of different people that I want to interview and different people that I want to do content with, vlogs I want to go shoot with different people doing different things. But do I have any ideas that are kind of like bigger than that in terms of like, oh, this is my grand vision for No Jumper? I mean, not in the same way, but sometimes like I'll go on vacation for a week and my mind has a lot more room to wander, and I find myself really thinking like, oh, I have this opportunity and maybe it's making me $0 or it's costing me a bunch of money right now, but you know, this opportunity could potentially be the big thing. Because like if I had told you when the come up was at its pinnacle, if I had said like, no, I'm going to start another channel and I'm going to interview all these underground rappers and it's
Yeah.
100 times bigger than the come up, I mean, nobody would have believed me. Somehow
Right.
that worked. It's like I have sort of like a fear of not taking enough shots at a certain point, because you never know which of these shots is going to kind of pan out into something bigger, you know?
Yeah. No, that's super interesting because like I've seen it in real life just at a smaller scale, like with businesses and like somebody who's super willing to take those little risks and like put money into something not knowing if it'll succeed. And then the polar opposite of that, where it's like, nope, this is working. We're just going to stick with this, push this button and keep getting the money until it stops, you know? And it's just like, you got to take some risk for No Jumper to even happen, you know? Like it's a interesting thought. I try and put myself in your shoes of like, all right, what are we doing now? And it's a, I, I don't envy the position you're in. I do envy the success. That's nice, but it's a lot
But
to handle.
also keep in mind that like all of my biggest interviews, like I've done interviews where I sat down with someone and thought it was a regular ass interview, and then it ended up being the biggest interview of my entire life. In the case of that X interview, it's like literally the biggest hip hop interview of all time based on YouTube views. And I had no idea. I thought it was just a regular interview.
Yeah.
And that kind of has like forced me into this position where I constantly want to take shots on people that are not necessarily like proven. Like the biggest interview I've done in the last couple of years was 1090 Jake, who's just like a YouTuber who talks about gang shit, crime shit. He has a crazy ass story. I interviewed him. It has 6 million views, and then like many, many more millions of views from the clips. And I mean that I kind of had a sense with that. Like I could have told you that it would probably do like 1 million views, but I definitely didn't know it was going to do 6 million views plus, you know, maybe 15 million views if you count up all the clips and shit. And like, I don't know, like that kind of, a lot of times I look at my day and I'll be stressing myself the fuck out doing 4 interviews. And then before the day starts, I'll look at the interviews and be like, I have no idea if any of these are going to move the needle at all.
But you
But
got to do them.
I got to do it because I just feel like there's a significant, even if it's a 1% chance for each of them, it's like, you know, that's just like I interviewed Jack Harlow before he fucking blew up. I
Yeah.
interviewed the Kid Leroy in his neighborhood before he blew up. Like even these are all kind of in the last couple of years, and it just like stands out to me. Like, oh, you have to keep taking chances on young artists or new artists or whatever, because you just never know where their career is going to go from there. And there's so much upside in connecting with these people early.
What's the last one that you did where you were like, I'm not sure about this one? Oh, you're talking about every single one. Is how you feel about it, but
Not every single one, but yeah, like I don't know. I mean, the ones I could name would like not even, they wouldn't even be people you've heard of, just like underground rappers that like realistically could explode, but probably like a 98% chance that they won't. But if they
right.
do, we got a winner.
I'm curious about like because I watched a YouTube video about you and they were talking about you pivoted away from doing underground hip hop to like more YouTube people.
I
And I
mean,
was
if you
like,
look at who we've interviewed in the last 6 months, it would be almost impossible to like actually craft that narrative. Because I interview YouTube people here and there, I interview porn stars here and there, but it's always been like 85% plus underground rappers or street rappers or whatever. Like, I mean, a lot of people they prefer one or the other. They like the underground dudes who talk about Xanax and use auto-tune, and then they hate the street rappers who talk about having ops and popping Glocks at the ops and whatnot. But to me, it's like all these they're all kind of in the same category of like younger rappers who are trying to make something out of themselves. I don't know.
What kind of rap are you into right now? Obviously, you like it all, and you always have. But what are you playing?
The music I actually listen to in my car that actually gets me excited and motivated to go do something with myself, pretty much throughout most of my life, has always been street rap. I'll call it street rap instead of like gangster rap or drill. But like, I don't know. There's something about aggressive rap music, fast paced, like intense. I don't know. Like it's just usually I'm drawn towards stuff that is, let's say, antisocial.
Nice. Give me a couple names.
I'm a big 22G's fan. I'm a big Pooh Shiesty fan. Free Pooh Shiesty. I wish I had my phone on me right now so I could list off everybody else that I've been listening to lately. But like, I don't know. I love King Von. I love Lil Durk. I love PGF Nook. I love. There's a dude named Fonzo 6700 that I've been listening to a bunch lately. There's a dude named MAFT Ski from Chicago I've been listening to. Almost everybody that I just named is from Chicago. There's a dude. There's a group called the Sweepers out of the Bronx that I'm real into. I love 4-1, which is like Kyle Rich, Tata, and Jen Carter from from Brooklyn actually. And yeah, I don't know. It's just like a lot of like underground rap that's like really usually more on the drill side of things, but I don't know. There's still a shitload of rap that I'm like really genuinely excited about. Although it is hard for me to find time to listen to it between preparing for interviews, listening to podcasts that have nothing to do with rap, and then also like wanting to stay relatively familiar with mainstream rap. Like I have it in my head that I need to listen to the Nicki Minaj album at some point, even though I'm never going to interview Nicki Minaj, but I feel like I should have at least some basic opinion of her album just because she's such a big deal,
Yep. That kind of leads me into, thank you. I'm going to look these drill guys up. It sounds pretty neat. I love hardcore rap.
Now they want to guilt trip me for that now because it's like, oh, you're an old white man and you only like music.
Oh yeah,
black men killing each other, and it's like, well, bro, I've been listening to the same fucking style of music my whole life. So if you want to try to demonize me for it now, I mean, okay, I guess.
You're such a racist, dude. It's unbelievable. I can't
always with this.
Yeah. Can't stand you. That makes me wonder about like guests. You mentioned Nicki Minaj. Like, if you could wave a magic wand, who's your dream guest for No Jumper?
I mean, if I had like a magic wand, I'm probably going to go with people who are so gigantic that the podcast would just reach a different level of popularity as a result. Like if I had Drake or Taylor Swift or I don't know, Adele. Who's the biggest rappers? I got like Lil Durk or Youngboy. That would be a big deal. But I don't know. It's just like, anybody who would really move the needle, because in terms of like the smaller, cooler people, it's like that's a lot more realistic. Like I would love to have a sit down conversation with Lil B, and that would be a huge interview. But it also, if I had to choose between Lil B and Drake, I probably should just do the Drake one, right? I'm sure Lil B would understand.
Yeah, big time. There's like it's an interesting thing too of just like doing this because I know it's good for the podcast, but here's who I really want to interview. And fortunately, you don't have to be in that like either or. You can do both. That's dope. I would imagine like all these people that you named, they know about No Jumper. You fucking in the zeitgeist. It's a interesting thing to think about.
It's just like, people now have so many choices when it comes to where they want to go do an interview. So like Nicki Minaj puts out this album and she did the Joe Budden podcast, which isn't out yet. And she did Kai Cenat's stream. I believe those are the two things that she chose. And so she pretty much went on like the biggest hip hop podcast that realistically, like she's known Joe Budden for all these years. They have a relationship. They have a mutual respect. It totally makes sense to me why she would go on that podcast instead of No Jumper, because realistically, she don't know me from a can of paint. I've probably made fun of her a bunch of times over the years that I can't even remember, that she might remember. And, she knows that if she comes and does an interview with me, I'm liable to ask a bunch of sus questions and sketchy shit that she probably doesn't want mentioned. And she goes on Kai Cenat. Like they have these opportunities now to go do content with like Twitch streamers who are just not going to drag you into a conversation that you don't want to have, so I totally understand why. But that kind of like forces me into like, if I'm going to define myself, I want to be the guy who has conversations with like people early on, or is able to put together weird combinations of people to have conversations that maybe were unexpected, you know? So a lot of my effort goes into that, because I mean, I can get millions and millions of views from interviewing people that realistically are not famous as rappers, but have like insane stories to tell, you know?
Yeah, big time. Makes me think of just, I remember, well, when I DM'd you asking to do this, you said, yeah, as long as I can tell you how to do a podcast. And I've been thinking about that ever since. I'm like, what advice is Adam going to give me, dude?
The thing that comes to mind first is like, I remember watching the Rat Boy interview and just kind of feeling like, Kanode, you needed to study a little harder for this one, because you were like asking him what shine was. And I'm like, I feel like you could have spent an hour on Google/YouTube and kind of like figured that out. Like, I just feel like I do so much research in the lead up to interviews, just like scraping YouTube and Google, trying to find anything possible to ask people about. And you're like watching some of Rat Boy's video parts for the first time during that thing, which me as like a diehard Rat Boy fan, okay, but like you're from a different generation. But my thing when I sit down to do an interview is I'm really trying to act like I 100% know all this shit, even though a lot of times I have the shit written down in front of me, or I'm just temporarily familiar with the shit. Like I know who you are, and I know who you're beefing with, and I know who you wrote songs about, and I know who your girlfriend is. And a lot of times that shit disappears from my fucking brain like a day or two after I do the interview, because it's not useful to me after the interview. But that is the one thing that from watching your shit that I was kind of like, you know, I feel like you sort of owe it to some of these guys to maybe, especially when you think with like Rat Boy, you could watch every video part that he's ever put out in like 15 minutes, because it's like 4 or 5 realistically like important video parts, maybe more if you really want to dig in there. But that was the sole thing that I kind of remembered that I wanted to say.
I'm curious about general podcast advice, not even just for me, but I mean, that's a good note. Fucking do your research. And I have for a couple guests. At some point, it just gets into I'm like, okay, let's go, you know. And it's a laziness thing. They all do deserve their at least respect. And I'd say if I knew you, or if I know you, then I'm not going to do as much research. But yeah. But general podcast advice, like, is it a conscious decision from you to just ask, like, what's the word, provocative questions? Like, do you go into a podcast like, here's the real kicker that we'll get to, you know, after we talk for 45 minutes, and then things are cool, and then, oh, what about this? You know, you bring that shit up on purpose.
Yeah, I definitely like my style of podcasting. If I'm going to interview somebody for an hour, 2 hours, whatever, is I want to like tell your story from the beginning, really like, you know, ask questions along the way. You mentioned some little detail about what your life was like when you were 16 or 18 or 21. And I keep kind of like digging into that, creating as many little threads of conversation based on like the narrative of your life. And then I also have all these other questions pretty much that'll be based around like, you know, different people that the person worked with, collaborated with, had friction with, etc. So it's like, I'm trying to like kind of go through the whole life and just like highlight all the different things that I know of that are important or interesting. And then realistically towards the end of that is when I'm going to try to hit them with a hardball question, like, you know, something that, you know, because if you start an interview with a rapper and you just ask right away, like, so I know you beefed with this guy.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. Like that, a lot of times it's just, they're going to be like, what the fuck? You haven't earned that question out of me. So I try to like really get them softened up and then hit them with it towards the end. And, you know, my attitude on that stuff, because I was just talking about this because Andrew Schultz basically like kind of called me out and said that I was the type of interviewer who, if I asked him something he didn't want to discuss, would just include it in the podcast anyway, which is not true for the record. I delete shit all the time for rappers, either because of legal shit or just messiness or whatever. But, you know, I like to get to the tough questions by the end, just because I feel like if you build up enough respect for your guest as time goes by, then they won't necessarily mind when you get to the stuff that that is a little bit more hard hitting. But also, like, you know, BMX, I remember realizing at one point was way different, because like there was one year where I think like 5 or 6 BMX riders got divorced. And you know, I'm like super paying attention to hip hop too, where like, you know, Young Jeezy's getting a divorce, Offset's getting a divorce. This is relentlessly documented in the media.
Yeah.
Nobody ever mentioned these 5 or 6 dudes getting divorces, which is probably a good thing because, you know, if they don't want their fucking life put out there for display to the world, then by all means. But I think that's the difference between a huge community like hip hop and a small community like BMX. The smaller the community gets, the less of an appetite there is to hear about the nitty gritty personal details of people's lives, you know, and that's kind of like a weird transition between BMX and I mean, there's a lot of drama in BMX that I had, different shit with different dudes over girls, whatever, never made it to the public eye.
Hit me with one.
No,
please share.
I don't want to talk about, but like you know exactly what I'm talking about, different stuff. And sometimes I wonder, like, geez, is that ever going to get brought up? But I think that is a good thing in BMX for the most part. They're like, it's a community. It's a real community. You're going to see everybody in BMX if you go to any decent number of events over the years, you know?
Yeah. It's funny that you say, you know, because my brain is shit. So I'm thinking back. I'm like, I have a vague sense, but I can't remember the other party. Oh,
That's
well.
BMX dudes beefing over bitches, you know?
That's, yeah, small world stuff. All right, cool. That's good podcast advice. What about like the marketing of it? Like I think on my Kanode knows I don't do much aside from get the clips going. And I had a small budget from Dig, which was fantastic and allowed me to pay editors to make clips. But because I did it a couple Sundays where it's like, all right, I'm editing the actual podcast, I'm watching it, I'm picking the clips, I'm going through, I'm editing each clip, which takes hours for each of those. And it's like 7 p.m. on a Sunday. I got 2 clips done and the podcast done. And I'm like, fuck, this is not, I can't fucking do this. I have other shit going on myself. So it's like,
that shit'll burn you out. Like
so fast.
I kind of respect that because I think that there's something really good that happens when you do a podcast and then you watch the podcast so that you can kind of like criticize yourself and like hopefully learn something. But it's brutal because it makes you, it's like exhausting the amount of stamina that you have to do more podcasts, you know? So for me, like, yeah, I don't do any of the editing or anything like that, but I did for years and years and years. And, but yeah, I mean, that is the crazy part marketing wise now is that I used to do interviews and the title would be the Bobby Kanode interview.
Right.
Now it's Bobby Kanode on his drug abuse, his scandals with his ex, you know, all like,
yeah.
You fill the title with as much shit as possible to get people to click it. And then you got to make clips and then you got to make YouTube shorts / TikTok / reels. And it's just kind of brutal because like they all have different, you know, there's just different levels of work that goes into all of it. And it's all just trying to get people to watch content that you don't earn that much money from. You know, it's like you have to get a lot of fucking views to even be able to pay for an editor to make the shit for you, you know? And that's just kind of bizarre that we live in a world where the amount of information available to everybody is so ridiculously dense that you just, you know, it's like you just got to go hard to get people to even have a chance of clicking on your shit. And even then, like I did an interview the other day with a dude who there was this whole scandal with this guy who he spent $60,000 on Ruby Rose's OnlyFans and it went super viral because holy shit, look at this simp who spent this much money on OnlyFans. And I did an interview with him where he admitted that it was all fake and this was all like OnlyFans promotion designed by her team. And then I had like, there's another YouTuber named Moist Critical that is gigantic.
Yeah.
He made a video about my interview with him, and his video got like 2 million views. And my interview with the guy got like 150K. So, I mean, on one hand, it's fucking awesome that 2 million people watched large chunks of my interview. And if they see me walking down the street, they're going to say, oh, you're that fucking guy from that or whatever. But at the same time, nowadays in the reaction world, in the commentary world on YouTube, a lot of times your best stuff just ends up being like raw source materials for other creators to create content out of, which is kind of bizarre. And sometimes makes me feel if this is even it makes me wonder if this is even an intelligent business to be in where there's so many people just kind of making money off of my content, you know?
Yeah, it's so saturated and it's bastardized or cannibalized. Like my original video doesn't get shit, but then Moist does a video on it. But
right. And the reason why that X interview that has 23 million views, like I don't think there'll ever be another hip hop interview that does more views than that, because in this day and age, the best moments are going to be put on Twitter and TikTok and Instagram, and everybody's going to see those moments. And there's just like way less of a reason for people to dig into the original video. So
that was almost pre-clips era, like the XXX shit. You weren't doing no podcast
clips
scrolling through Instagram.
I didn't cut clips. And this was way before it was normal to be scrolling through Twitter or Instagram and just see a clip from a podcast, which if you had thought of that early on, you would have been a fucking genius. But, you know,
Schultz.
you just got to kind of like, you have to just like accept the good with the bad when it comes to people sort of jacking your shit like that. Because, I mean, a lot of people blow up. Andrew Tate blew up because he was paying people to make TikToks of his content and spread his shit to a bigger and bigger audience.
No shit. I didn't know that.
And that's why,
smart.
That's why you always, if you're making content, you have to have like big picture monetization shit. Because if you're Andrew Tate, it makes sense for you to do that because he's not trying to make money off of YouTube views. He's trying to make money off selling you a fucking course that costs hundreds of dollars, you know?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that kind of I've been thinking about is like, you know, if I was like, it makes more sense for me to go do a podcast if I have like something that I'm selling that is like very profitable, like even a course that costs $100. If you go on some podcast and you talk about it a little bit and you get 10 sales, well, boom, you just made, you know, $1,000 off of going on somebody's podcast, you know?
What's your course going to be, Adam?
Well,
how to be a public controversial figure, how to handle hate.
I have like a course that I've written a large percentage of that I need to just really sit down with. That's about how to be a podcaster in general. And then I also, I feel like I could write something really good about how to, basically manage your career. If you want to be an artist, if you want to be a musician, I feel like I could put together like really, really valuable, like banks of information about that shit. So that is something that I kind of want to pull back a little bit, perhaps over the holidays and kind of work on a little bit, because like, I mean, to put in perspective, like Plug Talk, like if someone signs up, it's like $5 a month for the first month. And then it's $20 a month after that. So on average, the average person stays subscribed for like a month or two. So the average value of a customer for Plug Talk is like $20. And I remember I went on Andrew Schultz's podcast a year or two ago, and I think we got like 5,000 signups as a result of me going on his podcast and talking about it. So it's like I went on his podcast and like the next day realized like, oh, I made the equivalent of like 20 grand off of just going on his podcast. Holy shit. Thank you, Andrew Schultz. That was fucking sick, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like if you're doing shit, you kind of like need to find revenue schemes that are a little bit smarter than just like YouTube income, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I feel like it's such a grind. First thought is kind of related to the marketing of it. Like even if you're not cutting clips and doing as much as you can, like putting in that work, making the shit, posting it everywhere and blah, blah, blah. You're not, that's like entry level to be in the conversation almost. And then there's still so many variables that you can't control whether or not something does well. I want to know.
There's a lot of podcasters I watch who I'll start watching TikToks of their shit, and then I'll watch some clips on YouTube, and then I'll graduate to watching full episodes. And then I feel like I'm a full-fledged fan. And I know there's mad people like that with me, because I'll do an interview and the full YouTube video will have 100,000 views, and then the TikToks and the Reels will have millions and millions and millions of views. I mean, those are still fans. They're just not invested enough to watch the hour-long interview. But
there's like a journey of a fan.
Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes you go back. Like you'll get sick of watching the full things and you'll go back, and now I just watch the Reels.
Just give me the clips. Like there's a couple of podcasts, like the whatever one that you just went on. I do want to touch on that.
So many more people watch the Reels or the shorts of that shit than watch.
I didn't realize it was like a 5-hour live thing. Is that every episode? I've never watched a full episode of that show. Like that's
basically it.
It's fishing for clips. Basically, it's got to be their model. Like that. And I don't know. I imagine it's the same for a lot of podcasts where like the clips get way more views than the actual show itself. Like people talk to me and they mention the clips. They don't mention the actual show, which is interesting to think of.
Because of that, there's huge value in creating like really dense informational content. Because if I do a 4-hour interview with somebody that is just chock full of great conversation and knowledge and whatever, you can't make a TikTok out of that. Now you can make TikToks out of the moments, but like it kind of like the clip era reduces the value of just getting a viral moment and increases the value of having a 4-hour intense personal conversation.
Yeah. When you say that, what comes to mind that you've done? What's been like the most educational, valuable podcast episode that you've recorded?
Of all time, I have no fucking clue, but I mean, like, I interviewed Mama Duck, who's basically the mom to FBG Duck, and she's like a street woman for sure. Like she knows all about the gangs and the violence and the craziness in Chicago. But like, I don't know, just having a conversation with her was like, I don't know, it was amazing. Like it was just like super. I felt like I was gonna cry at moments during it. But then what happens? Like people take the clips and they'll take the most salacious angle from one of the clips, and that's the shit that goes viral, and that's the shit that people are asking me about, because there was one joke during it where she was telling a story about walking in on my friend J Main having sex, and I said, like, were you a little bit turned on when you saw him having sex? Like, how did you feel? Like, he's a good looking guy. Were you turned on? I didn't think it was that bad, but like, oh my God, everybody getting on my ass. Like, I'm like, I feel like you guys are kind of ignoring the fact that I just had like a really incredible 3-hour conversation with her, and that was like literally like 45 seconds of a joke in the middle of it. But I mean, you take the good with the bad.
Yeah, man. I can't imagine that scrutiny. I don't know if I would still do it. Like I think I saw somewhere like you haven't looked at your Twitter mentions in a minute. I don't know if that's still going, but I haven't gotten to that point at all. I see all the shit. I saw myself on Reddit. The one post about Kanode knows on Reddit was like, oh, it looks like Bobby's gone down the far right rabbit hole spewing disinformation from Joe Rogan about vaccines or something like that. I was like, what the fuck? What a crazy person on Reddit. But how do you handle it? What's your life like at home? Like you and Lena hanging out, and then are you sharing like, oh shit, they just said this about me, or do you just put your phone away and enjoy your life? I would hope it's the latter.
Yeah, that's something you got to figure out, especially when you have a kid. Like, I'm just going to get home and I'm going to turn off all this other shit in my life and just try to be a dad and try to not, like, bring any of my outside bullshit. Like, if I'm upset in any way about what's going on content wise, you got to really try to turn that off to just be there for your kid. But then, even with my girl, like, there's just always different drama and bullshit on No Jumper. And sometimes she'll come to me and she'll say, like, what happened with you and this guy? And I'm like, oh, that was like 2 weeks ago. Like, because I don't tell her, and she don't pay attention to like the deep No Jumper drama and stuff like that. So I just kind of like shield that away from her too. I talk about it with my friends and my employees, and I don't really talk about it with her. But we go through phases, like when we're like super viral. Like, I mean, sometimes it's hard to like focus on like sitting in bed and reading a book for an hour before bed, because there's like, if you're looking at your Twitter mentions, there's like a new viral post about you every 5 minutes. And, but then at the same time, it's like right now, like, I woke up this morning and I scrolled Twitter for like a half hour while I was eating breakfast, and it didn't even cross my mind to look at my mentions, because I don't even really like want to distract myself with what people are saying about me. Like that just doesn't really, it's just not that attractive to me. It's just kind of like, I very much believe that what other people say about me is none of my business. And I try to like live that by not getting myself so into the meta conversation about myself. But then at the same time, you do have to stay cognizant of that stuff to a certain extent because of the content and everything. But, sometimes I'm making videos reacting to people talking about me, and they talked about me for like a half hour, and I only watched like a 1-minute clip on Reddit or whatever. And I just like, I feel like it's so toxic to just watch content about yourself that I just refuse,
No way. No way. I can't even imagine, dude. That's probably the best thing for your health is to ignore that shit.
And I could so easily fill, I see people doing 3-hour live streams where they're just talk, like, I'll have an argument with somebody on a podcast, and then they'll do a 3-hour live stream talking about it. And it's just like, wow, there's probably all kinds of stuff in there. I'm never going to know. I'm never going to know. There's 1,000 comments. I'm never going to know what one of those comments says. You just kind of have to, like, after a while, you have to accept it. Like, okay, I'm a public figure. People talk about public figures. I can't force myself to pay attention to all of it. I'm sure Kim Kardashian doesn't like lose any sleep about not reading all the comments about her. At a certain point, you just have to accept, like, okay, people are going to talk about me, and anything really important that they say is going to rise to the level that it gets my attention. But avoiding that, I'm just going to kind of try to avoid it.
Smart, man. And you have to remember, like, the internet, I think about, like, I empathetically think about being you, and I'm like, I don't know if I can handle it, but I think you have a pretty solid grasp of like the internet and then real life. Like I imagine you're pretty fucking happy in life with Lena and Parker, and like life's good. You got money, live in a good spot, but then the internet can be a fucking crazy world, and you just dive in do your job and get out. You know, that's got to be
But the real world will always kind of like tether you back to reality, because I could be having like the worst shitstorm ever online, and then I go to my store and it's like, you know, I hang out in front of the store and just like kick it with the homies or whatever, and I'll have 100 people over the course of a couple hours ask me to take photos, and nobody will mention the thing that's going on online, or like, you know, and then like I'll go out to eat with my girl, or I'll go, you know, it's just like you almost always just get all positivity in real life. Now that being said, I have never been to my store without having an armed security guard like on top of my every move for the entire time that I'm there. So I'm sure that does like mitigate some of the negativity that I might occasionally encounter, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I want to be aware of the time. You got 3 minutes till you got to go to your next thing.
Yeah. Like another 10 or 15 if you want.
Nice. So, okay. I'm so curious about like the process of, because you're at a level of being, I saw you on The Fighter and the Kid, which I've been listening to forever and love it. And just like the behind the scenes of these bigger podcasts, because it's kind of, I mean, that's a broader topic, but the evolution of like mainstream media and the TV shows are fucking dying. And then these podcasts are where it's at now. And it seems like probably a little bit looser than going to NBC studios and having somebody do all your shit. But what's it like getting on Andrew Schultz's podcast? What's it like getting to do The Fighter and the Kid? And how does it come up? Are you reaching out to some of these people like, hey, I want to do the podcast? Are you getting reached out to? How does somebody get on yours? There's 17 questions to juggle.
Right. I mean, like Andrew Schultz, I've known forever. I don't even know how we got in touch back in the day, but he came on No Jumper in probably like 2016 or something, and like I went on Flagrant way back in the day when it wasn't really popping, and then now it's huge. And like, you know, I went to New York like a year or so ago and just hit him up, said like, hey, me and Lynn are in town, are you down to have us on? He said yes. And he actually has a dope spot right in the middle of Manhattan, like that they got like a really dope rental space that they built the fuck out of to make it like a super professional space in a small little area. But I mean, yeah, I just known Andrew for a long time, always been a big fan of him. Even I remember like letting him use my studio to record podcasts back in the day, just because he needed a studio and shit like that. Probably kind of goes a long way in terms of just building up good rapport and stuff. And somebody like Brendan Schaub, you know, I ran into him maybe 6 months ago on the Jet Suite thing going to Vegas. It's just like a smaller like jet type thing that you take to Vegas, but you're like
Uber for jets, no?
It's pretty sweet. Yeah, it's only like it's kind of cheap and it gets you there super fucking fast. I just ran into him on that shit. But I think I had asked to interview him before that, and like, you know, just kind of had like cool relationships from just seeing people around over and over. The one thing that stands out from a lot of people's shit, like Brendan's space is like right in Calabasas in like an office park. Like all the other spots around his are like office buildings, you know, like it's in an office building, but then his shit is a studio. But we can't do that. I had to buy this fucking $5 million monstrosity that we're in right now just so that people would be able to smoke weed in here. Because that was just like, we couldn't find a spot that was like a small, chill rental space to record out of that also could have like absurd amounts of weed being smoked by the guests all the time and shit. So he's kind of got it easy because probably almost none of his guests smoke weed. But for us, like I would not have bought this building unless everybody who comes here wanted to be able to smoke weed during the podcast.
Yeah. So like how I, was on a thread with you and Laura, like they have their people, or is it you like for those two examples in particular, you're just talking to them directly? But what about other shows like the whatever shit?
They have like a showrunner.
So it's
like
all coordinated. So you do the initial and then like you have your people set it up and then they tell you when to be there.
Anybody who asks me about doing an interview, I'm just like, all right, cool. Yeah, let's do it. I put them on text with Laura. Boom. Like it shows up in my calendar. And then we run it. So I don't really have to, because there was just so many annoying things that would happen where like people are texting me, calling me over and over, trying to ask me what the address was when it's like, I'm doing other podcasts all day. I don't have time to pick up the phone and tell you what the address is. She sends all that information to them directly and kind of is, even like I could schedule a podcast with somebody for 3 weeks from now. And then the day comes and they're like, oh, I'm in Florida, I forgot. And it's like, she's kind of on it, like calling them a couple days in advance, a week in advance, reminding them and shit like that. And you still end up with people who will act like they're coming and then they just don't come. So it's like if I look at my schedule and I have a lot of times I'll have 15 podcasts throughout the course of the week, and like, you know, 4 of them will end up being canceled for things that have nothing to do with me. So that's kind of part of why I like over schedule myself, is because I know some chunk of these are going to get moved around or whatever, you know?
Yeah. What about stuff that you want to get on that, I don't know, you don't have contact with? How would you go about, like, are there shows? Are you like doing outreach at this point? Probably, I would guess not, because you're at the level that you're at and it's kind of
I do.
organic, but
I reach out to people. I follow people on Instagram. I DM random fucking rappers and people. You know, it's like at a certain level, like, you know, I'm just not gonna like try to get on Joe Rogan. Like, obviously, I would like to be on Joe Rogan, but if it happens, it's gonna be because of a mutual friend mentioning it or whatever. Like, I've been mentioned on his podcast a bunch of times, so I know that he knows about me. He followed me on Twitter many years ago or whatever. But like, I don't know. I mean, I try to, like, at this point, I try to just go out. I go to parties and shit and like try to just like meet people, because I feel like that is pretty much like the best way for me to get more podcasts and more relationships and shit like that, is just like running into people. Like, DMing people is great and like hitting them up, but you know, if I go to a party and there's a bunch of successful people in there, a lot of times I'll think about it down the road and I'll be like, damn, I did 5 interviews because I went to that party for 2 hours and just happened to make connections with a bunch of people, you know?
yeah. No, I think there's
Gotta
something
be
to that.
more outside at this point.
Yeah, put that in your podcast course. Dude, that sparked my interest big time. Like, those are 2 super valuable things that you mentioned earlier, like creating a guide for podcasters and a guide for being your own independent. Like, I don't know shit about the music industry. I know Russ is a really good example of like owning everything that you do. So the business end, but I'd be so curious about that. And that's valuable. Like, you could sell that for a good amount of money.
Yeah, I think you need to like look at what people want from you at times and just kind of be like, okay, well, the fact that I get 5 million emails or DMs every day asking about how to make it in the music business, well, maybe I should come up with a product and kind of, you know, try to sell it and be helpful. And that's how I started. Like, I mean, I've made millions of dollars from just listening to people's music, just like
Yeah.
doing live streams, listening to people's music. I don't really even do it anymore because it's just kind of soul draining and just sucks. But you know,
Do
it's
you
like,
think the investment is paid off for anybody that's paid $150 to have you listen to their song?
I mean, I don't know if it's like that investment has really paid off, but there's definitely a lot of people from Juice World to YBN Namir to, you know, Megan the Stallion who like donated on those streams while they had nothing going on. And then they were huge down the road. And it's like, it's not always because of me reaching out or like saying like that it was the best shit I ever heard. But I do know that like, you know, certain people, like, I've played their music, A&Rs from labels and shit were watching the stream, and then the A&R reached out and got in touch with the dude and signed him to a $2 million deal because they were watching the live stream. So that shit definitely happens from time to time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know about the Megan the Stallion part. That's wild. Just
Yeah, I
like,
remember watching it and just thinking like, yeah, she's kind of hot and she's like kind of rapping good, but I just had seen so many girls that kind of like fit into that archetype and just didn't realize like, oh no, this is the one. Like, she's actually going to be fucking huge. So,
yeah.
you know,
Man,
it
it's
really,
probably
you
so
gotta give people
saturated.
a chance. You know, you got to like really be willing to try not to be jaded. You know, the same thing with BMX. It's like you've seen a million kids do a fly out truck driver, but if you really want to like find the next dude in BMX, you got to like just really pay attention and be like, well, that kid's style is like 10% better than all the other kids. And, you know, he seems like extra motivated and he seems like he's really like trying to go and film and stuff. So yeah, maybe he's not doing the craziest tricks right now, but he's kind of like, seems like you might have the motivation. Like, you got to just be willing to like pay that little bit of extra attention to people, you know?
Yep. Big time. No matter what the industry is, that's kind of always how it works.
Yeah.
Well, before you go, let me look at my freaking list. You did mention you have a 20-person team. I wanted to get into like what your actual team looks like. Oh, I want to know about what investments are you doing? Like, I think I heard you talking on somewhere, maybe Vlad, which, by the way, the Vlad interview, when you talked about YouTube titles, I was looking at their title, like Adam22 speaks on Lena the Plug and whatever the fuck else. I was just like, that's a wordy, that's just the YouTube game, huh? Like, should I title this Kanode knows Adam22 or should I say Adam22 blah, blah, blah?
I mean, it's always a choice because like your branding looks a little cooler if you have like simple titles, but then if you're really trying to bring people in, sometimes you need the more complicated titles, which
Yeah.
is unfortunate. But
But
yeah,
anyways, the question is, so that was a tangent off of Vlad TV, but I think it was that interview you talked about real estate, and I was like, oh shit, I know that world a little bit. Like, what are you doing with real estate, if anything? Yeah,
not
where's
much at this point. Like me and my girl own our home. I own this place, and then that's pretty much it for me right now. I mean, I kind of feel like I'm still at a point where I should take my money and invest it into things that like are part of my business, as opposed to like, your average return on like stocks or your average return on real estate is going to be like, realistically like single digit growth. Whereas, there's a lot of things that come up where I feel like if I invest $1 million into something that I can get a way bigger average growth if it's something where I really understand the industry or understand um the options for growth. So I don't know. It's like I'm very cautious, or like I have a bunch of money in stocks and shit like that, but I'm not. I also just have no time, which is kind of a weird part about it because I know a lot of successful people who are like, yeah, I do this podcast and I've bought 15 rental properties over the course of the past couple years, and I'm making all this money, and it's all like I'm just taking my podcast money and putting it into building this real estate empire, and it's probably super smart. But I also just like I have no fucking time. Like I literally like every second of the day is booked up. So I can't really imagine myself putting a lot of time into that. I'm also just like allergic to putting time into things that I don't feel like I'm an expert in. Like when a lot of people try to like sell me on different investments. And in my head, it's kind of like, you know what? If I don't personally feel like I understand why this is a uniquely good opportunity, then I'm probably just not going to do it. But I run into the problem all the time of my business manager telling me like, you have too much cash, you have to spend money on this shit, you're paying way too much in taxes, whatever. So I don't know. And I mean, that shit is attractive to me to like, oh, maybe I get to the point in the next 5 or 10 years where I just have a bunch of dope businesses going and I don't have to think about sitting on camera and having all these long-winded conversations. Maybe I would be happier if I was only doing a certain amount of that, and then I was like just investing my time and into other businesses. But I don't know, like that. I worry about that. Like maybe having all these conversations on camera is not the move in terms of building the business long term.
right?
Maybe
Yeah,
maybe you're just still doing this because you've been doing this for like 8 years or 10 years, and it just feels like the right thing to do. But also, like, I don't know, I've never done anything besides wake up in the morning and make content about shit that I was excited about. So I can't really imagine what it would be like to wake up every day and just think about how to make money.
yeah. Which is so weird because it's like the almost the same shit for you. Like the way you make money is doing the shit that you enjoy doing. I saw some quote about like I've never had a job. I've always just like done what I want to do, and I'm like, that's fucking awesome. And you're at this level doing. I'm sure you have days where it's like, fuck, I don't want to do this, but you're at least interested enough. But I could see you getting to a point where you're like way more selective on like who you want to interview, and it's just you're not relying on money from your face being on camera. Like you have other shit going on. I could totally see that. And just the general advice that you mentioned of invest in what you know and invest in what you're interested in, and then you actually pay attention to it. Like I can I can connect you to people in real estate who will take your money and give you 10%. Like I don't know it. I don't know the actual rates, but I know the big dogs in real estate that I could connect you to, but I'm not even sure if that's something that you want to do. It's interesting. I'm trying to like play your life as a video game. Like what the fuck would I do if I was Adam right now?
Well, because I was just thinking in my head, I'm like, if I could choose between doing what I'm doing right now and making $1 million a year versus doing a bunch of business shit all day, every day, and making 5 times as much, I kind of feel like I would still be doing this because it's just like my personal type of retardation is that I can't really like do anything that I don't want to do. So it would be like very hard for me to just do stuff like, I don't know. I feel like I find myself constantly zoning out during business meetings and important phone calls because I just like, I don't know. I have the shit that I want to do, and anything outside of that, it's just kind of difficult for me to put my attention into.
Don't care. Still don't care. That's just your inner monologue while you're on a fucking business call, dude.
Oh, for sure. I'll be thinking of the call, like, I do not care. I do not give a fuck. Why am I listening to this?
Inner thoughts can be brutal. All right.
I appreciate you, Kanode. Much love. Thank you for the conversation. It was nice to chat BMX for the first time in a minute.
Yeah, dude. Thank you. Appreciate you saying yes. I just kind of threw it out there like, let's maybe do this. And cool.
Nah, because that's a weird thing about me is I still watch fucking BMX edits like every day. Every day a video comes out that I want to watch. Not every day, but almost every day. And I'm just still find myself listening to, 2 or 3 hour long BMX conversations that have like 4,000 views. And I don't talk about them with anyone. Sometimes the BMX group chat, I'll like mention something from one of them, but I don't know. I still love the shit, even though in many ways I've just kind of lost interest in doing it myself, but I'm still just like, I just want to see what people do. Fucking Jordan Goodwin. Oh my God.
Yeah, he's so good.
God,
dude.
right?
Godwin. Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, and I feel like when I seen him at the OSS premiere and I told him, I'm like, bro, like, and I start telling him different tricks from all his different video parts and being like, bro, like when you did the ice hard on that one, and I could kind of see it in his eyes that he's like, what the fuck? You really watching this? I'm like, hey, I don't know. I just like, I can't stop paying attention to it.
He's the one to watch. That would have been my next question is, who are you watching right now? But Jordan's on fire. He's fire. Jordan, yeah. Felix.
But yeah, we the people in general, their team is fucking
Dan, dude. You saw Dan Crook's latest one?
Dan's part. I told Dan, I'm like, I watched that shit like 2 or 3 times already. Like,
yeah, dude,
really fucked up part.
It's progressive as shit. I don't know, the clip that sticks out the most to me, just like maybe I just saw it on Instagram, so it's still fresh. But the pegs to gap fucking G turn on the pad is so nuts to me, dude. It's so like, he's next level. I think severely underrated but at this point, I think he's getting his shine time. I don't know.
Yeah, no, Dan. I mean, you think about how long Dan has been going. Like, I remember seeing Dan when he first moved to Long Beach, and we had a Sabrosa flat rail in a parking lot for some reason. And I remember seeing him do like bar pegs whip, and this is probably 2012 or 2013 or something. And I remember the bar pegs whip. He did it, and I remember being like, "Wow, that was great." But holy shit, that dude is sketchy. And now he's just smooth as fuck. Like he did that trick, but he made it look very painful and difficult. And now when I look at him, I'm like, holy shit, like thank God he stuck with it, because he is super smooth and just doing the hardest tricks ever.
The crook to back over tooth to hard 180 is just like, what the fuck? And then he made it look like clean and smooth. I filmed him in person doing one of those tooth hards, and it was unbelievable. Like first try, I'm just like, that's not normal. Like Dan's a superhuman.
That trick in particular really fucked me up. A lot of the tooth hard or like the feeble nollie hard type stuff, I'm just like, how do you do that? What the fuck?
Yeah, what is your body doing? What does that even feel like? Like no fucking clue. All right, get the fuck out of here, Adam.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Kanode. Much love. Thank you.
Much love.
Big BMX.
Cheers, man. Welcome to the end of the episode. If you were here for some Adam22 drama, I'm sorry, but if you're here for some BMX shit, Adam has good opinions. That's debatable. Opinions are opinions, but I enjoyed talking BMX with him. So hopefully you enjoyed listening, and do me the favor of liking and subscribing and sharing the show with a friend. Let's grow Kanode nose. All right. That's all. See you later. Have a good day. See you next week. Maybe.